welcome to this session on Examrace. We will be discussing the UGC Paper 1 for June 2014. The UGC Paper 1 has 60 questions, so what we'll be doing is we'll be discussing 15 questions in one set. So we'll be talking about 15 questions in one go and then the next 15 questions in next part. So we'll start with the first 15 questions. The first question that was asked for UGC exam talked about argument. So it was basically on logical reasoning. So this was the first question. If the large diamond is cut into small pieces, it will lose its value just as an army is divided into small units of soldier loses its strength. The argument put above may be called as. This is a very direct question in the sense that here what the author is trying to do, he is trying to relate diamond to army. Okay, so when you are trying to relate or compare one parameter to another parameter, that is known as analogy, and therefore the answer is analogical statement. The next question is a very interesting question. It talks about the various formats of logical arguments and asks which of the following is not a is not an inductive argument. So the question goes on. Below are the characteristics of logical arguments. Select a code which expresses the characteristics which is not inductive in nature. Now there are two terms that a person must remember: deductive and inductive. What is the difference between the two? When I talk about inductive or deductive approach, the most important thing I need to remember is in deductive approach, the conclusion follows conclusively, or I am saying confirmly or surely that this is the answer. So I have a conformity. It's a confirmatory statement which shows conclusively whether the conclusion follows from its premises or not. On the other hand, in inductive approach, we talk about probably. We say probably this thing is correct and probably this thing is not correct. So there is an option of probability in inductive approach. When we talk about inductive approach, we try to formulate any new theory based on the data. Okay, so only this statement which shows conclusion conclusively follows from the premises is a deductive statement. Rest all the other statements are inductive in nature. The next question in the series was about this question is a very important question because this is a question from logic, and when we talk about logic, there are four propositions which we call as a square of opposition. So there are terms known as contradictory, contrary, subcontrary, and subaltern. What is the meaning of these four terms and how they are different? Now this diagram will help us ascertain more about the about the four aspects. So A, which is universal affirmation or universal positive feeling. A is universal affirmation, or the things which are universally correct is universal affirmation. Then you have E, which is universal negation. O, which is particular negation. And I, that is particular affirmation. All these four are interrelated in one way or the other. Now let us understand. Contradictory means if I am saying one phenomena is true, the other has to be false. This is the basis of contradictory approach. So I'll be putting up an interesting table that will help you understand the concept in detail. So here is the table. Just a second. Okay, so first is contradictory. In contradictory, as I said, if one is true, other has to be true. Other has to be false. So if I say all industrialists are capitalist is true statement, then some industrialists are not capitalist would definitely be false, because if I am claiming that all industrialists are capitalists, then I cannot say some industrialists are not capitalists. So if one statement is true, other has to be false. Is what is contradictory. Contrary statement means both cannot be true. What does this mean? If I say all giraffe have long necks, okay, and the next statement I say no giraffe have long necks, both of these statements cannot be true at one time. One has to be true. If one is true, other cannot be true. Okay, but in case of contradictory, we say if one is true, other must be false. In this case, we say one of them can be true and both cannot be true simultaneously, because if I am saying giraffes have long neck, I cannot say no giraffe have long neck. Then what does the word subcontrary mean? Subcontrary means both cannot be false. What does that mean? If I say some lunches are free is a false statement, I cannot say some lunches are not free. So if that is the statement, it would be true. So if one statement is false, other must be true. So if some lunches are free, there should be some lunch which is paid. If some lunch is free, the other would be paid. So if one is false, other must be true. So both statements cannot be false. And subaltern is a simple method where we say the superaltern supersedes the subaltern. That means if I say all dogs are animals, that means some dogs will be animals, but I cannot say the reverse. I cannot say if some dogs are animals, I cannot say all dogs will be animals. So that is what is subaltern. So subcontrary, both cannot be false but can be true. Contrary, both cannot be true. In contradictory, if one is true, other has to be false. And subaltern is if the superaltern is true, subaltern would be true, but the reverse is not correct. If I say all dogs are animals, I can say some dogs are animals, but I cannot say the reverse format, that if some dogs are animals, all dogs would be animals. Okay, so these are the four terms. Now the question was, now coming back to the question, if two prepositions have same subject and predicate terms, which can be true but cannot both be false, what does that mean? So the answer would be self-contrary, because they cannot both be false but they can be true. So the answer is self-contrary in this case. Now moving on to the next question. This is again an important question where a lot of students got confused. A simple but a question on reason. So let's go to this question. Okay. One writes all numbers from 50 to 99 without digits 2 and 7. That means if I am writing from 50 to 59, I would not be including 52 and 57. Okay, what does that mean? In 50 to 59, there would be 10 numbers. Of these 10, 2 are excluded, so 8 remains. Then 60 to 69, again 8. Then, what is interesting about 70 to 79? I would skip this whole series. Okay, and finally 80 to 89. What would be the case? Again 8 numbers. And 90 to 99, again 8 numbers. So 8 into 4, that is 32. So the answer would be 32. Okay. Most of the students, what mistake they did was they forgot to include 70 to 79 as one of the series. Now the next question is on Venn diagram. Venn diagrams is an important section. Every year 1 to 2 question on Venn diagram surely comes up. Okay. So here is the question, and here is the diagram that was given. In this diagram, the examiner says A means Indian, A implies Indian, B implies scientist, and C implies politicians. Now, which of the following class would include Indian scientists who are not politicians? Now, a simple way to solve this. So, this is Indian. This is again an Indian. Now, I'll change the color. That will make it easier. So, this is all scientist. Okay, all this is scientist. And again, this is scientist. So, these are Indians scientists who are not politicians, and again these are scientists who are Indian that are not politicians. So S would be Indian scientists who are not politicians. R would be scientists and politicians who are not Indian. Then P would be Indian politicians who are not scientists, and Q would be Indian politician and scientist as well. Okay, so in this case, since the question asked Indian scientists who are not politicians, the answer would be only S. This is a simple question, but a scoring question as well. A lot of people get confused in this question. Now the next question is a logical argument based on conclusion. It's a very simple and direct question. There are two premises, and based on that you have four conclusions. So first of the premises is, if all dogs are mammals, what does that mean? I can say this statement is correct. Since all dogs are mammals, there can be no dogs that are not mammals. Okay, so conclusion 4 is correct. Again, if I say no cats are dogs, that means again there can be no dogs which are cats. So conclusion 3 is also correct. Conclusion 1 and 2, I cannot judge anything about them because they are not clear from the premises. So the answer would be 3 and 4. That is, the answer is C. Now the next question, interestingly, is on data interpretation. A very scoring question. So this is the table that is given. Based on this table, what is asked is, there are various questions, but the principle applied in most of the questions is just two simple principles. One is new year minus the old year divided by new year into 100. So for example, the first question talks about find out the source of irrigation that has registered maximum improvement in 2002 and 2003. So 2002 and 2003. So the simple thing to solve is 14444 minus 13863 divided by 14444 into 100. That would be the case for government canals. Similarly, I'll solve for tanks, tube wells and other sources, and I'll calculate, and whichever has the highest value will show the maximum improvement. So this is a simple question to solve. Then the next is, in which of the following years net irrigation by tanks increased at the highest rate? So we are just talking about tanks here. Okay, so 1990, 98, 99. So what would be the difference in the tanks? The answer would be 2729 minus 2593 divided by 2792 into 100. Okay, so that is the case for 98, 99. Similarly, there would be the various different cases for 2001, 2000 and 2001. The values would be 2449 minus 2535. Okay, so since it shows a decrease, this cannot be the answer. We are talking about increase, so we need not to even calculate this. We can leave this out. Go on to the next one. So that is 1908 minus 1802 divided by 1908 into 100, and so on. Now the next question in this series is, identify the source of irrigation that has registered maximum negative growth of net irrigated area in the table. So which has registered maximum negative growth. So what we can do in this question is, we can try to calculate. In this question, it is easier not to calculate and directly solve the question, because the government canals, you have like a decreasing trend, which is very obvious. In private canals, there is a fluctuating trend. Tube wells, again, it shows the increase, then decrease, then increase, and then decrease. So it's a fluctuating trend. So the answer would be government canals in this case, because it shows a continuous decreasing trend, at least till 2002-2003. Now the next question is, in which year share of the tube wells and other wells to the total irrigated area is highest? So this is a different type of question. I said there will be only two types of question, two types of calculations that you need to do in this question. So this is a question which requires a different calculation. So in this question, what type of calculation we require is 98, 99. What would be the thing? Scenario would be, we have to take this value and this value. So what I would be doing is 33988 divided by 57411 into 100. So that is the way of finding tube wells to the total irrigated area. Okay, and when we ask about increase, we say the new year minus the old year divided by the new year into 100. So in this question, we'll calculate it by the base value upon the total value into 100. And the final question on this would be, which of the following have registered the highest percentage of decline? So now we would be talking about decline. Since we are talking about decline, we are interested only in those terms which are decreasing. From 1979, 97 and 2005-6. So I would be subtracting 15268 minus 17117 divided by 15268 into 100. So it would be a negative value, which would be very useful. Okay. So the next case is private canals, is again negative. Then you have tanks. In the case of tanks, it's negative, and other sources, it is positive, because this value is higher than this value. So this cannot be the answer. Since we are talking about highest percentage of decline, so we have to take these three values, solve that, and see which comes the highest. So this is the direct method of solving the questions on data interpretation. Data interpretation is indeed a very scoring section, because in this section, if you are doing your calculations correct, you are ought to score full on full. Now the next set of questions was on computers, or basic introduction to basic computers. In this section, the first question was, which of the following is not an image file format? Since we all know PNG, BMP and GIF are the forms in which we save the image. All three are image formats, only GUI is not an image format. What is GUI? GUI stands for Graphic User Interface. Graphic user interface means it's similar to what Windows use. So you have an icon. For example, this paint has an icon of pencil, then rubber, then fill, then A, that means text, and this is a magnifier tool. So by looking at the items, we can visually see and understand what it is meant for. So that is what is graphic user interface, which is mainly used in Windows. On the other hand, you have the command line interface. So this command line was the interface that was used previously, and it is mainly used in MS-DOS. So DOS prompt, when we talk about, uses command line. So you have to give the command paint, and then the paint would come up. So, or you have to give a command text, and then you can read the text. So that is what is a difference between GUI and a command line interface. Now the next question, the first web browser is, this is an interesting question, because a lot of students got confused in this question. a lot of students mark the answer as Netscape, because Netscape is, people have heard that Netscape is one of the first browsers. So the first browser that came into existence was known as World Wide Web. It is a common word. It's a single word. There's no spaces in it. So it's World Wide Web. Netscape Navigator was, however, the first browser that came into existence, which was most popular and very user friendly after World Wide Web. So the answer is World Wide Web. Then came Netscape Navigator. After Netscape Navigator, there was Internet Explorer. Then came Mozilla Firefox, and then finally Google Chrome. So these are the list of major web browsers. And then at Apple, you have Safari. Now the next question is, this is a direct question. Whenever you boot a computer, what happens? What is booting? Booting means starting any device. So when we start a device, what activates is the BIOS, that is basic input output system, and it is loaded to the memory. So what happens is, how it is loaded to the memory is by ROM, or the read-only memory. CD-ROM is the device where you put in your CDs to play the CD. That is the CD-ROM, is the CD drive that is put into the CD driver. RAM is the random access memory, and TCP is the transmission control protocol. It is similar to what we call as internet protocol, and what it does, it is used to connect the host computer to the internet, so that you can transfer or you can control the transmission protocols. The next question is something most of the students get confused with. What is MAC address? So when you read MAC, most of the students consider it as Apple Mac or something like that. But no, that is not the case. MAC address, hardware address and physical address are one and the same thing. Whenever you purchase any system, be it printer, fax machine, computers, laptops, each of the machine have its own unique address, which is known as MAC address, media access control, hardware or physical address. On the other hand, IP address is the address by which you connect to a common network. For example, I am working in an office where there are 5 computers. So these are the 5 computers. All of these 5 computers are connected to a common system or a common internet platform. Now, a person sitting in this computer, if he wants to access the computer information from this system, what he is doing is, he will know the IP for this computer, and he will utilize that IP to log into that system, and he can access that computer. So that is what is an IP address, or an internet protocol address, which is a common address which is shared with the same internet. And MAC address, hardware address and physical address, which are one and the same thing, are the address which are assigned to machine when they are produced. So each machine, be it fax, printer or anything, have their unique MAC addresses, or hardware address or physical address. And what we do is, we try to relate it to the IP address once they are on a common network. So only IP address is different from the other 3. So IP address is usually written in the form, this form, where you use dots as a common denomination. Okay, so this was again another question which we would be discussing in the further lessons. So this was the first part where we were talking about the first set of questions. So we discussed the first 15 questions of set X of UGC June 2014 paper. In the next session, we will be discussing more papers, more questions on the same paper. So stay tuned for more questions, and have a good day ahead. Good luck.